This question that I'm posing for this session, I didn't almost, I hesitated creating this session because I worried that like some people might be like, what do I want? Like, duh, I know what I want. Uh, but I got to tell you, I've done it elsewhere, and it's one of the most relevant and important and challenging topics and popular ones. Um, it is so difficult for us, for many of us, to even figure out or know what we want, to acknowledge it with ourselves, never mind acknowledge it with other people, right? It is incredible how difficult this is. So I'm glad you're here and tuned in for this one because it's so important, right? Um, it's interesting when you ask a lot of people what they want. Um, Either you often get a blank stare, right? People are, Somebody asked me this. I was talking about doing this session. Somebody asked me, well, what do you want? And I got locked up initially. And this is my thing, right? I mean, it's I'm a life coach, right? Um, it is really difficult. It causes me a little stress and anxiety and locks me up a little bit. So sometimes you might just get a blank stare. And then other times you'll ask somebody, what do you want? And this could be about something small or it could be about something big. They will answer other questions other than this one. They'll tell you what somebody else wants. They'll tell you what they think they should want. They'll tell you what's appropriate or possible in their minds given their age or circumstances, right? They'll answer those questions, but not tell you what they want. Isn't that fascinating? Right? I'm sure some of you, I mean, you maybe pop in the chat, like, does that resonate with you? And, you know, can you relate to that? Because for me, I certainly can. There are many instances where this has been really challenging. And again, it could pop up. I know people, who are so indecisive because they've got to factor in so many different things when making a decision, like say about going to eat. I've been in a food court with some people. I'm thinking about one person in particular who will be there 30 minutes before they can decide which stall to go to, never mind what they're going to order there. Some of that gets tied up in whether you're a maximizer or a satisficer. Satisficers are looking for a decision, clarity about what they want that will satisfy them, whereas a maximizer wants to maximize the results. And I'll probably do a different session just on that distinction, right, and that dilemma, those mindsets. But that can be part of it, right, for sure. But it's hard, and a lot of us, when it comes to thinking about what we want, we're never kind of shown how to figure that out and how to advocate for it and make it happen. Some of us, we've been following someone else's script in our lives for so long that we've forgotten how to think for ourselves and make decisions for ourselves and to really be in touch with what we want deep down inside. That was true for me to some extent when I was younger, where I absolutely, I told this story, I think, before here. In college, I couldn't allow myself to really buy into my dream of becoming a marine biologist for a couple of reasons. And so I kind of floundered and ended up, I liked my political science courses, so I was doing that. And I thought I'll just be pre-law. and I'll go to law school. And then I had this epiphany while I was visiting a friend in Washington, D.C., my junior year, that like, why do I want to be a lawyer? And all I could think about was my mother telling me since I was a little kid, go to Harvard or Yale and be a doctor or a lawyer. And I was like, well, I didn't go to Harvard or Yale, and I'm not going to be a doctor. Why do I need to be a lawyer? I realized I was following her script. And so I'm like, well, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer. I felt liberated. I felt such relief. And then, like, a voice said to me, like, well, what do you want to do? And it was the first time where, since probably high school, where I was like, oh yeah, what do I really want to do? And if I'm not going to be a marine biologist, I'm not going to be a lawyer, what do I want to do? And that's where I had this realization, like, oh, I want to study the Soviet Union. I want to be involved in preventing World War III. And that led me down a whole path to grad school and the Foreign Service and being a diplomat. And amazing. I mean, it set up a fantastic life for me. But I'd been following my mom's script, right? And it was only when I realized that and said, I'm not going to follow that script anymore, that I was able to write my own. And I did a pretty good job of writing a great script, right? And in addition, a lot of us are so used to people pleasing and accommodating other people's wishes and needs and wants rather than our own, that it starts to blend in our minds and feel like it's our preference, like we have the same preference as they do, or our preference is within a small box to accommodate these other people, and that's not healthy either, right? Because it's not a choice that we're making. In a way, it's a subconscious accommodation to be a smoother, a people pleaser, conflict avoidant, whatever, rather than knowing ourselves and what we want and need, right? And being able to get that. We think that because we don't complain a lot consciously, that we're okay with that, right? That it's what we actually want and desire. But that's not the case, right? There are a lot of us who suffer in silence, right? In many ways and in many aspects of our lives. So, so what's underlying this? Like, how do we end up in this situation where we don't know what we want? For some of us, we were never really asked what we wanted, like say growing up, like as kids, or we were told explicitly or implicitly that what we wanted had to fit into a certain box. It had to comply with certain expectations or assumptions. It had to fall within acceptable limits, right? And, in some cases, that was just a reality of a family. My family was poor when I was growing up. We were on food stamps a lot. And the reality was, I was told, I wanted certain things. I couldn't have them. I wanted to play the piano from when I was relatively young, like deeply wanted to do it. And, was told like a piano or when my aunt and uncle were selling their organ, no, we can't afford that. Can't afford lessons. Don't bother. Right. And so that whole thing, was closed off to me. And my desire to play the piano or eventually to play the guitar, got stifled, and it got wired in my brain that was not an okay thing to want. That was not possible. And it was really only, in my 50s that I finally was able to give myself permission to want that and to start pursuing it in a serious way. And, and I've been off and on taking guitar lessons and trying to learn the guitar, but it's much harder at this age than it was or would have been when I was a kid, obviously, right? But again, I wasn't willing to accept that I can't want to play the guitar because I'm too old for it. No, it's just harder, but but when I'm doing it more consistently, it's really enjoyable, and you know, my soul feels different when I'm doing it. But that I've had to work to overcome that, right? Um, for some of us, we've spent so long um, managing other people's hopes, desires, expectations, preferences, etc., that it started to make it feel like we were the problem, right? That we're the ones complicating things. We're the one making it difficult, right? That our desires are the problem, right? Because our first instinct, our first responsibility somewhere in our brain got wired to be taking care of everybody else or accommodating everybody else, right? For some of us, it's almost like a fear of failure. We're afraid of acknowledging what we really want because we're afraid we won't get it, right? And that certainly has been something that I struggled with at times. And it makes it difficult for me to ask for help, you know, to really lean into some of my hopes and dreams at times because I was afraid I wouldn't get it, right? I was afraid of that rejection, that failure, right? Particularly when it's when we're expressing our wants and even sometimes our needs to people that we love and care about who are important to us. Like if we've gotten it wired in our heads that we're not worthy or our needs or wants aren't as legitimate as other people's, then that fear of rejection in a way can be really palpable, and stifles us even acknowledging what we want inside. Right? And then this is another one that I struggle with that absolutely got put into my brain when I was a kid, and that's that some of us have been taught that having wants at all is selfish, and that selfishness is like the worst thing. I mean, I can remember being on my mother's lap when I was probably like no more than like 4, maybe 5, something like that. And I don't remember what it was about that I said or I asked for or something, and my mother said that I was selfish. I was being selfish. And I was like if it was clear that was like the worst thing you could be. And it absolutely set a pattern for me feeling like I couldn't advocate for or ask for what I really wanted because that would be selfish. Um, and then our economic situation, our financial situation compounded that as time went on. So I had to overcome that and really, you know, think about selfishness differently. In some ways, right? And I read a book when I was 14, looking for answers to stuff like this, called "Looking Out for Number One." It was a bestseller at the time, and in the book, the guy says, "Look, here's the reality. There's only one person who's along for the whole ride. And that's you. No one else is with you the whole time. And therefore, only you can know what you really want and need. And only you can truly, effectively advocate for that. And do what you can to make sure you get it. So you have to do that. And you're going to suffer, other people will suffer as well if you're dissatisfied and martyring yourself all the time. And that, you know, in the end, there's only one person that's going to go in the box at the end, and that's you. And along the way, we are going to make most of our decisions based on some form of selfishness, right? If not all of our decisions. But there's good selfishness and there's bad selfishness, right? Bad selfishness, if we want to call it that, is when you're pursuing your wants at the expense of other people. and their well-being. That's not good, right? But if you're not harming anybody else, pursuing what's good for you and what you want often can be very healthy. And it can allow you to be in a better place, a better position, better frame of mind to be of service to other people as well. Right? If someone texts me tonight and says, "Hey, do you get a minute to chat, tonight," and it's not an emergency and I need to get to bed, it's okay for me to go, "Hey, not tonight. Can we talk tomorrow or the day after?" I'm going to be better for them if I'm not like half asleep and sleep deprived tomorrow and all that. So, so there are plenty of times where like it's good for you and good for others to have clarity about what you want, what you need, and be able to advocate for that, right? It all starts up here, and I would argue for a lot of us, this is where the biggest challenge is, because we're not even willing to be honest with ourselves about what we want. And I always go back to my favorite book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. If you haven't read it, you should. It's awesome. I've read it, I don't know how many times. When I was running a lab school in New York, we used to give it to all the kids, got a copy every year. It's that important, I think. And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. Mean what you say what you mean, use your word for good, not ill. And that includes not only what you say and write to other people, it means your inner dialogue as well should be impeccable, right? And a force for good. And yet, many of us can't even be honest with ourselves about what we want, what we really want, whether it's right now or over the next couple of years or in the future. It's really, really difficult for a lot of us. And it really matters because we need to be in touch with our authentic selves, right? What really matters to us, our core values and beliefs, our hopes and dreams, right? Because that then will allow us to hopefully like and love ourselves if we can then project that outward and act in alignment, right, with integrity, with those core values and beliefs and those wants and hopes and desires. And that will allow us to have authentic relationships and connections with other people. If we're just performing for other people and losing contact with our true self and our truth, then we're wearing a mask with everybody else. We're performing a role with everybody else, as well as with ourselves. And that's not healthy, and it precludes us from having authentic, meaningful, deep connections with other people. Here you go, Neha. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it is a fantastic little book. Again, I've read it over and over again. The four agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't make assumptions, don't take anything personally, right? The way other people treat us is almost always about them, not about us. And always do your best. And the idea is that if you can honor those agreements with yourself most of the time, life gets a lot better and easier. And that's certainly been my truth, and for my students and clients and everybody else who I've worked with, right? Don Miguel Ruiz. Let me put it in the chat. Don Miguel Ruiz. And it is a wonderful little book. And now that you've heard about it, you probably see it everywhere. I remember when I first heard about it, I'd never heard about it when I first heard about it. All of a sudden I started to see like celebrities and athletes and whatever walking around on TV with the book. It's funny. Okay, you can't have a life of integrity and authenticity if you can't be connected to your truth and what you really want in life and what really matters to you, right? So it's got to start up there, right? And there's a difference between what you want right now that would bring you comfort, relief, approval from other people, validation from other people, right? There's a difference between that and what you really want for your life. All too often, we will seek out what's comfortable, what feels safe, what feels familiar. And we then equate that with what we want. But oftentimes, those are polar opposites, right? They're certainly often quite different from one another. And so we need to be aware of that. This is where mindfulness becomes so helpful, is to really be aware of your thoughts and be able to be curious about where they're coming from, what the root of them is. And is it fear? Is it, avoidance of conflict? Is it being a people pleaser? Or is it what you genuinely want, right? Because it's an alignment. And it's okay sometimes, sometimes we are going to seek relief and comfort and all that. That's okay. But we need to understand there's a difference between that and what you really want in your life. And often we ignore the second one, right? We'll do what's easiest, most immediate for comfort, relief, accommodation of other people, and keep putting off doing what we really want, right? And that's not healthy, right? And I've had so many times in my life where I really had to figure out like how to resolve that tension between doing what I felt like I should do or needed to do or what would be the easiest thing with the least conflict. Whether it was, when I was a diplomat in the State Department and I ended up quitting publicly over the genocide in Bosnia, my mother's reaction initially was, she was horrified. She's like, oh my God, you're giving up your government pension and the president's going to be upset with you and send the CIA after you. And while the FBI did eventually tap my phones and I ended up on the no-fly list, what I did was great, and I was the most proud of that in my life professionally, and it was in honor of what the values my mother instilled in me. But it took my courage to do something where I knew I was going to be criticized by some people, and the administration tried to smear me in the press, and but I knew that if I was acting out of integrity and what I really believed and wanted and needed to do, then things would turn out okay. And they did. They turned out great, actually. And that's been true also in relationships, right? Where stifling what we want in a relationship can be really toxic, right? It can lead to resentment and distrust, and uncertainty and unsteadiness throughout the relationship. So that's not good either. We need to be that's one of the reasons why, when we think about like falling in love and dating, we're often attracted to what's familiar, which often is actually negative traits or experiences from our parents or our parents' marriage and relationship when we were young, because those are strong memory engrams. And so we're subconsciously attracted to that. It's why so many people end up marrying the wrong person. They marry someone who, on some level, reminds them of one of their parents, or their relationship with this person reminds them of the relationship between their parents or grandparents or somebody when they were young. But also, we're programmed to uh, to seek out what's safe and familiar. Uh, because look, when we were prehistoric people, that's what kept us alive was people and food and whatever that we were familiar with that was safe. But uh, but figuring out what you really want is different, right? It requires some level of discomfort and exploration and uncertainty, which can be scary. Which brings me to the second thing about who we're attracted to. We're often sold the idea that what we're looking for is fireworks. And what often makes us feel like the fireworks isn't just like the physical chemistry, but like that nervousness and agitation, disruption of our nervous system, right? Butterflies and a little bit of fight or flight almost, right? That anxiety. But what we actually want is our nervous system to be calm. That's who we want to be with. Someone who calms our nervous system. Because that will allow us to feel safer being honest about what we want and what we need and advocating for it and dealing with conflicts as they come up and resolving them together as a team. That's what we want, right? We want someone who our nervous system is calm with. It's very different. It's very different, right? But if you've experienced that, you know how wonderful that is, right? All right, so let me take a pause. I've been talking at you a lot. First, does anybody have anything they want to pop in the chat? A question, and a realization, an epiphany, something that resonates with you, pushback, whatever. Pop it in the chat. And then as people are doing that, I'd ask if you want, close your eyes again, or if you have a journal, maybe you want to get that out if it's handy. And I'm going to give you 3 prompts. And pick one and think about it, meditate on it, write a little bit about it, see what pops up. See what pops up, okay? So the first one, if nobody would be disappointed, inconvenienced, or surprised, what would you want? If no one else would be disappointed, inconvenienced, or surprised, what would you want? That's the first one. Let you sit with that for a moment. The second one, what if you stopped letting yourself want because it seemed too big, too late, or too selfish? What have you stopped letting yourself want because it seemed too big, too late, or too selfish? And the third one, if your life 5 years from now felt genuinely right, aligned, like not perfect, but aligned with who you are and who you want to be and what you want in life, what would be different from today? Right? So 5 years from now, your life was aligned. It felt genuinely right. What would be different from today? If you feel comfortable, pop in the chat. What came up? Right? Either if you were relieved of the burden of worrying about being a people pleaser, right? Didn't have to worry about someone being disappointed or inconvenienced or surprised. What would you want? For those of you who maybe have stopped letting yourself want something because it seemed too big or too selfish or too late in life or whatever, right? Those assumptions, or those boxes that we put ourselves in, the judgment. What would you actually want if you could allow yourself to believe in that again? And then the third one, if sometimes it's helpful to imagine the future, right? Because like lots possible 5 years from now that you may not feel is possible now. But if you think about that, like what if things were right then? What would be different from now? And you can start moving in that direction, right? Yeah, so Judy says put the questions in the chat. I'd be happy to, right? And Shaylin says, one, surprised. Two, not got completely. Three, want to be happy and satisfied. Okay, so first one. Let me just move the mic out of the way for a second. If nobody... Ooh. Actually, let me do it this way. I think this will work. Modern technology. This is the first one. Second one. Third one. Here we go. And these are good ones. You may want to think about, taking a screenshot and using these as journal prompts or meditation prompts the next few nights, next few mornings, and see what pops up, right? Let your subconscious chew on it for a night or two and then do some writing, and see what pops up, right? But we need to find ways to prompt ourselves to go beyond the habits of mind and behavior that we have had hardwired into ourselves for most of our lives, and allow ourselves to really get in touch with what's deep inside and what we really want, what's really good for us. And it shouldn't be this hard, but it is for a lot of us, right? There are other people where they're unapologetic about what they want and demanding it, asking for it, etc. Right? But for a lot of us, this is hard. Lynn says, living somewhere else. Yeah. Right? There's a lot of people who have stayed where they are because it's comfortable or they're expected to, but they really feel like they're living out of place, that they should be someplace else. Right? That certainly was true for a large number of years for me, right? And it was interesting, I stayed in the New York area because initially I was married and then I was divorced but had kids and they were growing up. But even once my kids were grown, I stayed in that area. I mean, part of it was my job and I love my job and all that, but part of it was like an expectation that that's just where I had to be. And then I had the epiphany that I could do life coaching and meditation teaching from anywhere. So why don't I do that full time? And it was like, oh, right? Changed my life. Here I am, right? So now I want you to think about if something came up where you got some clarity about what you really want. I want you to practice this week, but I want to make it really kind of easy to do. This isn't, what you want it's not like you have to make some big commitment to it or come up with an elaborate plan. It's information that you've been denying yourself to this point. And it's information that can help guide you in your decisions day to day. So I want you to try this week to notice what you want, right? Make that your intention this week, to just notice what you want and allow yourself to think that and want it. That in and of itself, that'd be great. If that's your homework and that's what you do this week, you observe what you actually want and you allow yourself to recognize that and to actually want it. Great. If you're ready to take the next step and share that with somebody else, even better. Tremendous, right? Take one of your wants and build that muscle. Let yourself acknowledge it without talking yourself out of it and share it with somebody else. But let that be the first baby step. That first, you're not going to talk yourself out of what you want. You're going to acknowledge it internally. That's the first step. It's often the hardest. The next step, whether it's this week or next week, share it with somebody else. Unapologetically. You don't have to demand it, insist on whatever, but be clear, this is what you want. Short-term, long-term, whatever it is. And let that be the first step in the direction of empowering yourself to acknowledge what you want and breathe life into it. And think about how that would actually feel. Right? Right? You know, you're given a life, not a role. No real expectations, right? Those are imposed by other people and ourselves. The way we honor this gift of life is by allowing ourselves to be fully present, to know what we want, to know what's important to us, and to live with integrity with that. That's how we honor the gift of life, right? There's only one you. If you're trying to please other people and deny yourself your truth and deny yourself what you want and need, you're in a way denying the universe the presence of the unique beauty that is within you. That's a shame. We need you. Right? Yeah. Any final thoughts or questions or things that resonated with you in particular? Judy says, I also feel out of place and have for a very long time a deep yearning. Wow, that's powerful. To live somewhere else. Ireland often comes to mind. Beautiful place. Great people. Scotland is mine. I'm drawn there. Went there for the first time, I don't know, 4 years ago or something like that, and just think about it every day. Always thinking about when my next trip is back. And at some point, probably to live there part of the year or something. I don't know. I could feel it. Anyways, I hope that was helpful. And again, I encourage you to do some meditating and journaling about this with those prompts the next couple of days, and to practice not talking yourself out of what you want, but just to acknowledge it. Again, it doesn't mean you have to pursue it with fervor and vigor, today, but let's practice at least acknowledging it so that information is available to us when we make decisions, right? Rather than repressing it. Right, or suppressing it. If something resonated with you here today and you'd like to make a donation to support this kind of live content here on Insight Timer, donations are welcome and deeply appreciated. So thank you in advance for that. I hope you're following me here on Insight Timer. If you're not, please do. And if you want to get in touch, to do deeper work here, you can get in touch with me there. If you have questions, you want to follow up on this session, suggestions or requests for future sessions, you can message me as well. And I have a community here on Insight Timer called Living with Integrity and Joy. It's what I call everything in my universe, podcast and company and website and all that. And so I hope you'll join that. And I share my Substack there. I and other people have shared like meditations that we like. So we're trying to turn that into a community of people who are trying to explore questions like this and live with more integrity and joy. So I hope you'll consider joining us there. And then I've got a mini course that a lot of people have taken and seem to really enjoy, and you can ask questions and we can have a conversation back and forth within that course. So I hope you'll check that out. It's called Living with Integrity, not surprisingly. And then I've got a lot of meditations up here, and I hope you'll check those out and rate and review those and let me know what kinds of meditations you'd like me to do in the future. I've got some new ones up there, and I'll be putting some more up in the coming weeks. So let me know what you'd like there in terms of meditations. And then my next session here, well, the card's not there. The next session here is, I do these on Wednesdays at noon Eastern. And so next week is here. Let me pull up what the title of it is. For next Wednesday, it is, one sec. Oh, sorry about that. Here we go. Letting go of the life you thought you'd have. Those of you who've been here the last several weeks know that I've been kind of on an evolving theme over the last month or so of helping you work through some things that block you from having the life that you want. Obviously, today is very central to that, right? Knowing what you want. One of the things that blocks us is oftentimes the regret, the second guessing, the guilt, the shame about the life that we thought we'd have, but we don't have, right? For some of us, it's like we wake up one day and realize, I've been following someone else's map. I've been following someone else's script. And that remorse, that regret, that shame, that guilt, whatever it is, holds us back from moving forward. So we're going to talk about that and try and heal some of that next week, right? But again, I really appreciate sending you all much love and gratitude. I love this community here, and I'm deeply grateful for it. And again, I hope this was helpful. And I encourage you to really lean into this practice of listening to yourself deep down inside, what you really want, what you really need, and acknowledging it, validating it yourself, and being able to express that and use it as a part of your conversation with other people, your relationships, your decisions as you move forward, right? You owe that to yourselves, and you owe it to the rest of us too, right? Thank you. Again, much love and gratitude. Thanks for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, right? Judy, Lynn, thank you. Thank you to everybody in the chat who participated in the chat. Really appreciate that. It made it so much better. So thank you all, right? Be well, be love, be loving energy. That's why we're here.